In today's episode of Fight Night Picks, we're going back to the basics, we're making up some changes, and we're looking forward to a pretty drab week in MMA. So, let's get into it. It's brought to you by Spretzbox. Head on over to the website spretzbox.com. All you have to do, click to get started. You can either order one of their boxes that has over $100 in value, or maybe you're interested in a single item like these great socks. So click on them, add them to your cart, head on over to the checkout, and then all you have to do is enter in the promo code FNP as follows here. You'll save 10% off your first box or your complete first order. That's spretzbox.com. Fight Night Picks is brought to you by Strikeforce Energy. Head on over to the website strikeforceenergy.com if you enjoy the flavor of freedom. The company's veteran owned and everything's made in America. They've got great apparel. You can turn any 16.9 ounce beverage into an energy drink. There's no sugar, no calories, no stirring or no shaking required. They also have a line of different products as well as Strikeforce Coffee. So if I head into my cart, I've got a 4-count sample pack. I've got a 20-ounce coffee mug. And if I head into that checkout, use the promo code FNP, click to apply, and you're going to save 20% off any order. That's FNP at strikeforceenergy.com. Okay, Matt, so really excited. New look to the show, and it might not look a whole lot different here, but if you follow along below in the ticker, there's some special things coming up. So what we're going to start with is a recap of the weekend that was. We're going to go really quick, brief over it. You had Bellator 219, UFC Philadelphia, one championship, a new era. We had an interview with Gary Tonin. We'll get into that a little bit later on. We're also going to preview the week that is, and like I said from the outset, Matt didn't like the word drab, but it's a pretty drab weekend in MMA. You've got Road to M1 USA. You've got BKFC 5, M1 Global, and it's another Road to M1 Global, as well as Fight Nights Global 92. So not a whole lot going on in MMA. No Bellator, no UFC, no Ryzen, no one championship. However, we're going to change things up. So we're going to get into a deep dive on Twitter. We're going to do what's now going to be known as a Twitter purge. And then we're going to give our highlights and lowlights of the week. So as you could see, a drab week in MMA. I've got a picture of Artem Lobov and Jason Knight from BKFC 5. Fight Night Picks has covered bare knuckle in the past when both competing organizations, you had WBKFF coming out looking strong, big fights there, didn't pay anybody. No. And then you had BKFC who are legit the pioneers. They're doing it the right way.
Still, I couldn't care less about bare knuckle boxing.
Some people are really excited for it. Also this weekend, and a reason why you're not going to have a lot of big MMA cards, WrestleMania is this weekend. So that's going to take away from a lot of the viewership. So let's go over a bit of a recap in the weekend that was. So, if we have a look at the weekend that was, Matt, we had Bellator 219 on the Friday night.
Crazy
one of the
event.
best fights that you and I have seen in some time. Why was it so good?
Because if you like technique, you're not seeing any. It was a lot of Brandon Gertz doing a lot of this. It was a lot of Sad A-Wad going like this and then waking back up and then hitting him. It was a very exciting fight. Pretty much the whole thing was spent on the feet. Both guys just throwing bombs for the whole thing.
Sad A-Wad looked half decent like he normally does, but he's kind of regressed a step since he fought Benson Henderson in his last one and then dropping a close fight to Brandon Gertz in this one. I had Gertz winning 29-28.
Yeah, I thought he had won as well.
Not a whole lot of controversy there. It was a unanimous decision win for Gertz. In the co-main event, you had Daniel Strauss coming off just about an 18-month
That fight
layoff.
will make you emotional if you watch it.
Shane Crutchton, not an overly great record in MMA. Kind of a decent, chance for him to get into it. Yeah. The thing with Crutchton, though, former member of the U.S. Special Forces. He also had names of fallen comrades on his back as tattoos. So kind of neat stuff there, but a good win for Daniel Strauss. And then, of course, you had former welterweight champ Andrei Korshkov fighting Mike Jasper. Jasper coming in on short notice. It was supposed to be Lorenz Larkin in that fight against Korshkov.
Such a good fight.
Korshkov lit him up. I thought it was going to be finished.
Yeah, I did too. I mean, he looked good, but that's pretty much where it ends.
You also had Joe Schilling on there against Keith Berry. Schilling obviously getting the win.
Just cigarettes are hell on your cardio.
Gas tank didn't look great, actually.
Nah.
And then Joey Davis, super wrestler, undefeated in NCAA. I think it was Division 2.
I believe
at
so.
133-0. Got a win over Marcus Anthony. So a good one there. That was Bellator on the Friday night. On Saturday night, you had UFC Philly. Overall, going back over it, if we had to give this card a letter grade, Matt, what would you give it?
B minus maybe, because a lot of the fights were okay decision fights. There wasn't a lot of excitement early on in the card. At least it wasn't that great, if we're being completely honest. There was a lot of weird decisions too, like Rebrand kind of got screwed over in his fight. The Gerald Mearshart fight and Kevin Holland started out pretty good, and then both guys' cardio kind of went after 3 minutes, and then there was some sloppy grappling in there. Desmond Green finally picked up a finish, so that was really nice to see. Sadiq Youssef, I thought he looked really good. He's worth a follow on Twitter, too.
And realistically, for me, the biggest fight of the night and the biggest finish of the night was Josh Emmett's comeback.
I think you're crazy if you think that's the biggest one.
We hadn't seen him, biggest comeback for sure. We hadn't seen him in just about a year. We detailed how bad those injuries were. You can catch a recap of our live event companion over on sportsbooth.tv. You can find us there for all the big MMA fights. We're going to go live next weekend. You've got UFC 236. We're really looking forward to it. But Josh Emmett coming out in the third round. He was down on the judges' scorecards, arguably. He was starting to kind of fade a little bit, and then all of a sudden he came back with a hellacious overhand right.
He did.
Landed it.
But I would argue
good finish.
Jack Hermansson submitting David Branch in under a minute is way bigger, just due to the fact that David Branch was ranked, Michael Johnson wasn't. Michael Johnson hasn't looked all that great down at 145. He hasn't looked all that good since the Dustin Poirier fight, which is, I think, the last... No, I guess he beat Lobov and Philly, but Poirier was the last high-level guy we beat. And let's be honest, if they had a rematch, Poirier would probably whoop his ass. But the fact that Michael Johnson just hasn't looked all that good at 145 doesn't tell me that Josh Emmett knocking him out should propel him into the top 5.
It was a good win for sure.
It was, but
it was a good comeback win. Jack Hermansson had been on a bit of a train. He was able to get a finish in his last fight, which was relatively recently. And in the main event, Justin Gaethje taking on Edson Barboza. A lot of money was on Barboza. He was a relatively slight favorite, but a lot of people picking Barboza, myself included. But you always had to know that damn zombie that trains in Colorado had a damn good chance at winning, and he was able to get the win in that fight.
Justin Gaethje's the coolest. And not because, like, he's got this crazy amount of skill or he's going to go out there and out-technique people. No. He's going to throw overhands, leg kicks, and elbows, and that's about it until you fall down.
All right, so that was UFC Philly in a nutshell. And if we move on to Saturday morning, I was up at 3:30 a.m. local time. I got 2 or 3 hours of sleep. Hell of a card. Just from the start, even if we go to the prelims, and you know what, before we get into it, let's go into a little bit from Gary Tonin before he fought Anthony Anglin on the recent episode of This Week in MMA. And as far as his fight's concerned, coming up next weekend with a win, you'd be 4-0 as a pro. What's the logical next step in your career? Would you sooner face like a top 5 type of guy, or would you like to keep climbing the ranks?
It's a good question. I don't know what they're going to do. Now, I will say this. I believe that in their most recent post about me anyway, they hinted towards potentially giving me a title in the near future. They made a post that said something. It was like a highlight of me. And then it said, "Oh, when do you guys think Gary's going to get a shot at the title?" So that was the first I ever heard anybody from One say anything about like, oh, interested in giving Gary a shot. Right. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if they were just making that a social media post and it means absolutely nothing. It might have just been a promotional thing. But that I will say that was the first inkling that I've got that they're interested in heading that direction with me as far as right now. Honestly, man, I'm game for whatever they're interested in. I'd be happy with a title shot relatively soon. I would be happy with continuing to just get opponents that aren't contenders yet. I do want this though. I do want every fight that I have to be kind of a step up in competition. Otherwise, I don't think it'll feel. I won't be as motivated, right? So I really feel like this fight that I'm taking right now is a big step up in level of competition because he has realistic knockout power, and KO kicked some dude the same day I was fighting. It was so it was crazy, man, because I saw that. It was the first fight on the card that I was fighting on, and I'm like, oh, man, don't want to fight that dude. And then they were like, hey, you want to fight Anthony Anglin? And I had to look it up for a second. I'm like, isn't that – yeah, that's the guy that head kick KO'd somebody. That's what I got to do now.
And then he fought 2 weeks later.
Yeah, he fought a lot, man.
Yeah.
It was crazy. He actually fought, I think, in a span of – I think he fought like 3 times in 3 months.
Yeah, fought 5 times in a year. Crazy.
That's really like almost unheard of in the MMA world. So that's pretty impressive. I know in kickboxing they do that kind of stuff a lot, but MMA that's pretty rare. And he was successful. He won 2 out of the 3. So I mean, kudos to him. He's a warrior. Clearly, he's trying to bring it. So I'm really excited to fight this guy because, like I said, it is a level up in competition. So to better answer your question, at some point, I know the title's coming, right, if I keep winning. So I'm ready for it, but I'm also ready to just keep working my way up. I don't want to go down. I just want to make sure we keep increasing the level of my opponents. And as long as that's happening, I'm happy.
I mean, great conversation with Gary, and he looked like a world beater. First round TKO ground and pound. He was all over Anglin.
Yeah,
he got on top of him. It was all wrestling based. Not a lot of grappling. Didn't have to use that BJJ. He's one of those special talents where he doesn't.
He did mount him pretty.
Oh yeah, he doesn't. He doesn't just work on his base. He's trying to add tools to his game.
He's good at everything.
And his ground and pound looked insane. So good fight there. Mei Yamaguchi able to get a submission win. She formerly fought Angela Lee. A great fighter there. If you go up and down through the card, Danny Kingad, that was a fun fight against Senzo Ikeda, coming over from Pancrase, former champ over there at 135. That was the very first fight in that flyweight division Grand Prix. You also had Timofey Nasyukin looking great against Eddie Alvarez. And a lot of mainstream MMA media weren't all over one when it was going on. I know my Twitter was busy, and there were, 5 or 6 big names, not myself included, but just tweeting things around and sharing everything. So it was pretty neat to see. But, Eddie Alvarez, to me, just didn't really look like the Eddie Alvarez we knew.
I mean, his eye got split open, and that was disgusting. That's pretty much all. I only saw the highlights from a lot of this card. I didn't stay up all night like a serial killer like Craig did. But from what I saw, Eddie Alvarez, he even came out and said I don't know if it's switched to ONE FC, I don't know, or ONE Championship, sorry. He felt like something was off going into that fight. So if you look at Eddie Alvarez, though, I mean, he did lose his first fight in the UFC, did go on to become UFC champion. The only difference is he lost that fight to Cowboy Cerrone, not Timofey. I'm not even going to try to...
Timofey Nasyukin has power. A lot of people are previewing it.
But he's not Cowboy Cerrone. He's not Dustin Poirier. Nah. He's not Conor McGregor. These guys have been able to beat Eddie Alvarez. This is the first step backwards maybe for Eddie Alvarez. Maybe he comes back and looks great, but I'm a little suspect of Eddie in the future.
Step backwards for Eddie Alvarez. A nice step forward and a great debut by Demetrius Johnson. He got into some sticky situations, actually, in his fight against Yuya Wakamatsu. You saw the uppercut. There was a welt under one of his eyes there when he was able to get the win. But getting the win, he looked great. His wrestling looked insane. His wrestling looked like classic Demetrius Johnson, and it was a good win there and a good way to start off that Grand Prix. Also, the winner of that fight got a bye into the finals, so it was 2 on one side and 4 on the other. So there's going to be a semifinal fight to see who makes it into...
Makes sense, though. I mean, Demetrius, he's going to run through a lot of these guys.
Exactly, and a great start for him. You also had Viviano Fernandez getting the win over Kevin Bellingon. Wow. Their last fight was insane. It was such a good fight. This fight sucked. This fight was terrible. It wasn't good to begin with. Fernandez actually did look pretty good in the second round. In the third one, it was a disqualification due to an elbow to the back of the head by Bellingon to Fernandez. They were sitting. Bellingon went down, hit him in the top of the head, and they called it there. Fernandez looked visibly upset that was kind of the way that it had to end. They didn't really do a post-fight interview or anything like that. And then Craigie went bye-bye because Aung La Nsong was able to win his fight at 205, and then you had 2 belts that... Zhang Jinan was able to hold on to her 125 belt. Angela Lee popping up, trying to win that. And Shinya Aoki able to get
one of the big stars in Asian MMA.
Realistically, able to get the welterweight title there against Edward Foliang, beating him by arm triangle in the first round. So a good win by Aoki. I know a lot of people are looking forward to possibly Eddie Alvarez fighting him, but
I'm sure they will in the future, but... Yeah, because that's the thing with a lot of other organizations. People don't really realize that is UFC is the only one who goes by, like... rankings kind of. Everyone else is just like, okay, this is a fun fight, let's see them fight. Doesn't really matter if you're coming off a win or a loss. We'll definitely see that matchup sometime in the future. It kind of depends on how far in the future it'll be.
All right, so that's the recap of this past weekend. Now it's time to show you something that we showed a little bit on Instagram and on Twitter. I'm going to give you a live look right now at the new studio. So here we go. All right, so live look here. Yeah, so we totally changed things around. Now we're going to be watching ourselves apparently on the big screen.
Where you go, maniacs? We Google ourselves.
We've got some soundproofing. We've got the professional lighting kit. And now we're going hard in the paint.
So now Craig can start his next career of being an Instagram model. That's really what those lights are for.
Yeah, pretty much, more or less. But it's a good time. So this is this is what's going on, and this is what we're really looking forward to. All right, so now you've got to look at what we're seeing here. Studio is a little bit different. We're going to be watching the fights on top of us, and no brag, just fact. We changed up from an old 19-inch TV that was ripped to shreds and got a Walmart special. So that's what's going on in the office, and just putting a little bit of money into it because we really enjoy doing this, and hopefully you enjoy
up in the world.
Tuning in with us. We have a lot of fun. So now it's time to preview this week in MMA. It's a fairly shallow week in MMA. We're going to start with the first card coming up on tonight.
Dakota Cochrane, you might know him because he fought Johnny Hendricks.
He knocked out Johnny Hendricks with WBKFF. You got Road Dem 1, USA 2. The first one was from a mall in Tennessee. Was hardly even covered. With this one, we've got the broadcasting debut of one Paige Van Zandt.
I have a problem with this, and I explained it to Craig when we were walking around the mall earlier today. The fans of Paige Van Zandt aren't necessarily the hardcore fans who are going to go the extra step to watch M1. So I really don't know how much of her fan base she's going to bring over to there. It's the same reason why they put her on Fight Night events a lot, because Paige Van Zandt fans aren't necessarily the ones that are going to go the extra mile to buy the pay-per-view as well.
All right, Matt legit got pretty fired up about this one. But as far as this card's concerned, you've actually got Jamal Emmers taking on Derek Minor. That's going to be a good fight. A lot of people might recognize Jamal Emmers. You've also got...
Now, does that include Travis Fulton's bar fighting record? Because it's absurd.
Travis Fulton's going to be taking on Shannon Rich. A lot of people high on this fight because Travis Fulton has a record of 256, 54, and 10.
You heard that right, folks.
And Shannon Rich is 57 and 86. So that's just a lot of fights between two guys.
This fight is so wrong on so many levels.
Travis Fulton, the second-ranked heavyweight in Iowa, according to Tapology. And Shannon Rich is somehow the number 6th-ranked light heavyweight in Mexico.
Not a lot of heavyweight MMA fighters in Mexico.
You've also got Travis Weuf at 75 and 22, taking on 8-3 J.R. Lugo. And like Matt mentioned in the main event, Dakota Cochrane taking on James Warfield Lane.
Thin card.
That's a good name. You've also got Road M1 taking place in Chelyabinsk, Russia, but it's another one of those feeder type cards, so not a lot of great fights on there of note. Just not a whole lot. Not a lot of fighters with double-digit fights even. But
there is the pound-for-pound number 665 fighter in Russia to look forward to.
There is another good Russia fighting series. You've got Fight Nights Global 92 from Moscow, Russia, coming up on Saturday. It starts at 2 p.m. Eastern is when you get that main card. Dmitry Bikrev taking on Maxim Buturin. And if you look at Buturin, 16-1-1. We did a deep dive on this guy. He fought cans. He straight up fought cans. So it's a padded record taking on a guy who's 10-3 with legit competition experience for the promotion's welterweight title. Maybe have an eye on that. But realistically, in the main event, you got a former UFC flyweight title challenger in Ali Bagatinov taking on Vartan Asatran. And neither have I, honestly. Did a deep dive on these two guys. If you look at your former UFC title challenger, he had a decent run up until the end. He fought guys like Joseph Benavidez.
John Lineker.
Had a loss there. Got a win over John Lineker. Decision win there.
Failed for EPO after fighting Demetrius Johnson.
Failed for EPO.
That's a real steroid. That's no picograms. That's as hardcore as it gets.
Those are your MMA cards for this weekend, but arguably the biggest card and the card that's next to us right there, who you got? Artem Lobov taking on Jason Knight. I take exception to, and it was probably one of the bigger bits of news this week. We'll get into it in the Twitter purge, but Paulie Malignaggi did a face-off with Artem Lobov, which looked like it was encouraged by BKFC, which is a smart idea marketing-wise on their part, but stupid because it made no sense for these two guys to stand face-to-face, realistically.
Have you seen the video of when Paulie figured out it was Rumble Johnson holding him back?
Yeah.
That's a good video.
Either way, Artem Lobov, a striker against a grappler in Jason Knight. We saw Phil Baroni as a wrestler fighting against Chris Lieben, and Chris Lieben actually on this card taking on Justin Baseman, who's on a 9-fight losing streak in MMA. He did fight some top talent
to move on,
in his career, but yeah, Chris Lieben coming off that big win over former guest of the show, Phil Baroni, who hit me up earlier on this week, and we had a conversation on Twitter.
There you go. Christine Ferreira, she did fight Rachel Ostovich. She TKO'd her in Invictus. Some of you guys might recognize her from that. But, yeah, I don't have a lot of stock in bare-knuckle fighting, I'll be honest.
Matt doesn't. We also had a conversation, way back when when the dialogue show was going on with myself and Ty O'Keefe, we had a full, I think we call it a mini-series on bare knuckle boxing when it was starting to come up. So Jeff Houston, who's the ring announcer for this card, he was on there. We also had Tony Lopez and Christina Marks, and people keep reading that article and enjoying that content. And it was a really good interview. I mean, Christina Marks was on season 26 of The Ultimate Fighter. That was the season that Nico Montano won.
Oh, yes.
For some reason, I couldn't remember. But
here's the thing. I watch every MMA card. Craig and I both watch every fight. I completely forgot who she was the other day until someone brought her up.
Which is a shame. And just one more point of BKFC 5. Sam Shoemaker's taking on Chase Sherman. This is going to be Chase Sherman's real bare knuckle, kind of his coming out party. But Sam Shoemaker is a really cool story. If you go back and watch, and I'm not a big Vice guy, but if you go back and watch the kind of Vice mini doc that they did on the first BKFC card, it was really cool because Sam Shoemaker basically threw his name in a hat and said, I want to get into this. And man, he looks great at bare knuckle boxing. He was legit made for this. He wears butterbean trunks. He's got a US flag tattoo on his arm.
It's a real man.
He had a one punch knockout in his last fight, and it was awesome. It was an overhand right. And if you listen to the announcers, they more or less said that he used to be a pitcher, and so he just kind of throws that arm out there overhand style like he's pitching a ball, and it was awesome. So
you guys might remember Chase Sherman from losing a lot in the UFC from tweeting. That's a solid guy.
And now he's in Island Fights, and he actually has fought half decent there. So that's what you can look forward to this weekend. Now it's time for a new segment on the show, and you can see on the screen over on FightNightPicks.net, you can find articles, podcasts, YouTube content, Sports Booth Fight Companion. You can find us there. As below, you can find me at Craig Allen FNP on Twitter and Instagram. You can find Matt on Twitter at Matt Allen FNP. But the point of this is the Twitter purge. So we're going to talk about some of the bigger events that took place and some of the more breaking news on Twitter of late. So we're going to start with the biggest story. We're going to gloss over it a little bit, but the biggest story from this past week was, of course, Conor McGregor started it out as we talked about the confrontation between Paulie Malignaggi and Artem Lobov. So finally, Conor released some sparring photos from their session before the Floyd Mayweather fight. How much stock do you hold in these pictures?
None at all. It was a Paulie who was out of shape and thought he was retired. It was Conor who trained. And maybe Conor would beat him in straight boxing. I have no idea. But just beating a guy in sparring doesn't mean anything. Michael Bisping beat Luke Rockhold the first time in sparring too, and Luke Rockhold kicked the shit out of him in their second fight. Sparring doesn't mean anything to anybody. It's like who won an exhibition basketball game. It doesn't matter.
So that started a firestorm. Ali Abdelaziz got involved.
Also, Artem Lobov isn't Conor McGregor. It's not like, Conor beat this guy up, so now Artem can. Not at all.
No, exactly. So that happened. Then Conor and Khabib got into it.
That was interesting.
And that's really where everything started to go downhill. So,
yeah, talk some shit.
Khabib went right down and dirty.
Certainly. Well,
and
in
so
that
did
picture,
Conor.
Connor's trying to.
Both guys went way too far.
They did.
There's no need for this kind of stuff. I know we're showing it here, and we're going to go quick. So we're going to go from that into this.
First of all, just
Chris Cyborg, Sierra Bahadurzada, Kelvin Gastelum were just...
A lot of people. Bilal Muhammad, a devout Muslim who was disagreeing with both of them.
A lot of athletes, not just MMA fighters, but in particular MMA fighters that are a part of the company, came out against this, and Chris Cyborg was probably the biggest one there. I mean, I liked it and retweeted it. You can see it there, but it's got 1,000 likes. And a really positive message from Chris Cyborg, who's over in Africa right now, building walls with the big pygmy Justin Wren. She's really doing a lot of great things.
Being legitimate good people.
Yeah, the fact that her and Don Madge, and I think we have a clip right here.
Obviously, you called for the bonus after that fight. If you do get it, any plans for where that's going?
Man, I've got quite a few plans. Without giving too much away, I kind of my mom's taken care of me for my whole life, and I would like to just sort of help her pay her back for everything that she's done for me over the years.
And yeah, Don Madge is doing a lot of great stuff with her in camp, but Chris Cyborg's doing a lot of great things outside of the UFC. She's a great ambassador, and even after losing her title, she still remains as one of the bigger faces in MMA right now.
And that's really the unfortunate thing right now. Everyone's paying attention to this Conor Khabib beef and whatnot. There's a lot of MMA fighters doing really good work. We were talking about it earlier today. Dustin Poirier's got his foundation that he auctions off his fight clothes for it. They're building a I think, they're building a playground for special needs kids. A lot of other fighters have vowed to help them with that too. Like, there's a lot of other stories that we could be focusing on right now that are way more positive than this beef between them.
Yeah, exactly. So a great thing that the Cyborg did, and other fighters as well, and athletes and media personalities as well. I know not just the majority, I would say all of MMA media came out against what happened there, and the Twitter trolls can stay away.
Yeah, like we had mentioned Justin Rem before, he's got malaria 4 times to build wells there. Like, 1 million people die.
He hasn't fought since 2017 because he's been on this mission to help people. So great job by Justin Wren as well as Chris Cyborg. And if we move that train along, as far as fight news is concerned, Alexei Oleinik stepping in on short notice, taking on Alistair Overeem.
It's not a good fight for Alexei.
Alexander Volkov out of this fight.
It's interesting, though, as to why he was out, because there's kind of 2 separate narratives going on right now as we're doing this show. Kind of one source says that he's had USADA issues, and then the other one said that he's just been injured. So it's really odd, the situation around him being pulled from this fight.
Either way, neat to note that Alexei Oleinik was at UFC St. Petersburg in the main event, taking on Mark Hunt. He's also going to be in the main event of the second Russian card, so good for Alexei Oleinik.
It is. Not for his brain health, though.
No, I've got Overeem in this one so far. But good that they could find somebody to step up on short notice. As far as fight news is also concerned, so UFC Orlando. It was originally supposed to be Jacare Paulo Costa. Then it was...
No, it was originally supposed to be Jacare Yoel Romero. That was the original headline.
It's all over the damn place. I'm having a hard time paying attention.
Just for the beginning. The original main event that was rumored was supposed to be Yoel Romero versus Paulo Costa. Yoel claimed that Paulo had some USADA issues, so then Jacare was brought in. But it was pretty far out from the fight, so it's not like it was on short notice for either guy. So then they made the poster, they basically branded this whole thing as Jacare versus Yoel 2. And then all of a sudden today, or 2 days ago, recently, I guess, because I can't remember the exact date, Yoel Romero had to be taken out of the fight due to an illness. Now, the first plan was, okay, we'll just have Paulo Costa fight Jacare. I guess he didn't have those USADA issues. There was just a miscommunication there. But here's the thing. Paulo Costa is not accepting the fight with Jacare. So right now, Jacare is basically in a main event with no opponent.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really weird too for Jacare, and this is something that's getting forgotten, and it just spurned a light bulb in my head, and it might be because these lights are so damn bright, but Jacare basically came out and said in the last little bit, couple weeks, that if he gets a win here and doesn't get a title shot, that's it for Jacare. So I wonder if he'd stay in a holding pattern and wait for the chance.
No, he would definitely do a fight.
Kind of like what some other fighters have done, or if he goes the Gaslam route and takes a fight quick just to try and get something done, as we have Gaslam taking on Adesanya.
I think Jacare is definitely... I think he knows he needs a title eliminator, so I don't think just because, like, let's say this fight falls through, he's not the main event, he's not just going to wait for a title shot, because it doesn't work that way. There's other guys in front of him. But if he were to beat Yoel, I don't think there was any way to argue that he doesn't deserve the next title shot.
And the last bit of news, and something that's going on currently as we're taping this, you've got Josh Burnett's Bloodsport, a hybrid MMA wrestling organization.
I lost all the energy.
However, Josh Burnett just recently signed off of Ariel Helwani's show. He signed the contract. You're going to have Josh Burnett taking on, who knows, but he's going to be in the Bellator heavyweight division. So really looking forward to that from Josh Burnett. And yeah, I mean, he's going to be joining a pretty
shallow division.
Growing division, but it's relatively shallow and old. So
he's just became their best heavyweight.
Good for Josh Burnett, and that ends the Twitter purge. So that's a new portion of the show.
Hope you enjoyed.
We're going to leave you with this. We're going to go through our highlights and our lowlights of the week. We're each going to pick a highlight, we're each going to pick a lowlight, and spend, just a brief amount of time on them.
I wish I was notified before the show.
My lowlight of the week.
Yep.
I think we're probably going to agree on this one.
I'll pick a different one, though. But
all right, so my lowlight of the week is going to be the spillover of Conor McGregor and the Khabib feud online. I mean, no place for it in the sport. It's completely unnecessary. Everybody came out against it except for the diehard fans of those fighters. No need for it.
My lowlight of the week, I guess it might have kind of blended into last week, but it's still quite topical. The co-main event for UFC Miami, I don't know if you guys have seen the poster. It's something. So right now, Greg Hardy's the co-main event for UFC Miami, and that's my lowlight of the week. Because even if you take all of his personal troubles out of the fact, he's had one UFC fight that went to a no contest. It should have been disqualification. And he didn't look good at all. He gassed out in the first 2 minutes. He threw a lot of big power shots. But if he can't connect those power shots, he does have the grappling to fall back on. He doesn't have a lot of skill. So just the fact that him as a talent should not be the co-main event. They should definitely spend that marketing money on someone who actually has a future in MMA.
Yeah, we tried this in the co-main event one time. He was losing a fight to Alan Crowder, and then he cheated and lost. So that's kind of my feelings as well. It's going to be weird, too, because he trains out of ATT, so they're going to play up that whole Florida thing. But realistically, I don't think there's anybody out there.
No, who agrees.
There's a very select few who would agree to have this as a co-main event
Those
slot.
people don't read books or go outside, though.
I don't read books all that often.
They don't
for
stuff.
pleasure, I don't really read that many books.
Just
either way, my highlight of the week is the comeback that we had mentioned earlier on, Bellator 219. Daniel Strauss coming back off such a long layoff, had to relearn how to walk, had to relearn how to fight. Told Mike Goldberg, Josh Thompson, and Big John that he was about 70% in that fight coming into it.
That's
so
pretty good for 70%.
I started to get pretty worried, but he actually did look really good, and I'm sure he's going to be able to keep building off of that. The fight was at 155, but he plans on moving down to featherweight, so you're going to see... I wouldn't say a revamped Daniel Strauss, but it's going to be a different Daniel Strauss.
He still looked good in that fight, though. Like, it didn't look like he had much of a hitch to him.
No, exactly. He did look really good. So that's my highlight of the week.
My highlight of the week, and I guess it's more something to look forward to for next week. And again, I feel like it's been overshadowed a lot. Just 236. It's your next big pay-per-view. A lot of people are kind of looking over this because it's 2 interim titles, but even if you take the interim titles away, you have 2 phenomenal fights at the top of that card with Dustin Poirier fighting Max Holloway and then Kelvin Gastelum fighting Israel Adesanya. So I know I'm kind of breaking the rules here, but that would be my highlight of the week. The highlight of the week is that next week is going to be better.
Next week is going to be better, and of course, you can find us, as always, on sportsboot.tv. We're going to be hosting a live fight companion for UFC 236. Max taking on Dustin. Israel taking on Kelvin is crazy because Kelvin just had that fight.
He did.
And we missed it. But
Israel just fought. Like, that's the difference.
And usually guys that fight like that are pretty damn fresh when they come out. So
Israel's going to win, but we'll talk about that at some other point.
Really looking forward to that. As always, be sure to subscribe here on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up. It does actually help us. Check out Strikeforce Energy. Spretza-Box. Use those codes, FNP. And at the same time, you can find an audio version of the show that's going to be a little bit different over on iTunes, Stitcher, CastBox, wherever you find your podcast. So hopefully you have a good weekend. Maybe you're going to watch Bare Knuckle. Maybe you're going to watch Road Dem 1. Maybe you're going to watch WrestleMania. Maybe you're going to enjoy yourself on the weekend and enjoy some of the nice weather. We've got some snow coming up. We had about 10 centimeters yesterday. And we're going to have a good weekend. We'll see you again next week.